These are the 4 reasons why Victor Wembanyama will inevitably become the league's best player sooner than we thought. And after that, I'll discuss whether or not I believe he's a top 10 player in the NBA right now. The first reason is how his scoring ability is simply unfair. If you're trying to game plan against Wemby, the first thing on your list will be how he puts the ball in the basket. On the season, his numbers look more like an all-NBA player than a sophomore, averaging 25.4 points, 10.2 rebounds, 3.9 assists, with a league-leading 4 blocks per game on 48% shooting. But it was after the first 10 games of the season where he really got things going, as in the 15 games since, Wemby has put up MVP numbers, averaging 30.2 points, 10.3 rebounds, 4.9 assists, and 3.9 blocks per game on 50% shooting. What's allowed him to put up 30 points a game is just the amount of ways he can put the ball in the basket. Because he's a 7-footer, he can obviously score at the rim, which he does with percentages of 79% in the restricted area and 54% in the paint as a whole. But where the numbers get alien-like is how Wemby's making 36% on his 3-pointers, but most incredibly, how he's shooting 38% on shots between 30 to 34 feet from the basket. This stat is laughable, as he's a 7-footer making shots from Steph Curry range while still being incredibly dominant at the cup. And it's not like he's taking fewer shots here, because Wemby's one of the most high-volume deep shooters in the NBA, attempting 9.5 threes per game. His most recent outing at the time of making this video was on Christmas Day, and there he made NBA history by recording the 3rd highest scoring Christmas debut game by dropping 42 points, 18 rebounds, 4 assists, 4 blocks, with 6 made triples, shooting 16 of 31 from the field. This scoring performance was only behind T-Mac and Wilt Chamberlain, putting himself into rare territory. The 42 points he scored felt like it came off mainly jump shots, and yet he was still able to get to 42 points. Every time he was rising up in the mid-range, it felt like he was Kawhi Leonard, and every time he rose up for a 3, it felt like Curry. That's how dangerous he felt in this game. I'll get into it more deeply later in the video about why he's taking mainly jump shots, as I believe it's all part of a greater plan. Wemby's offensive game is already far ahead of where I thought it would be after just 1 season in his career. And when you watch him play, he's simply unbelievable at times. Here he gets the size advantage against Randall and first uses a cross to create space, which he then attacks into, and even though Julius recovers, Wemby uses a ball fake to get an angle needed to bank it off the glass. This play is simply absurd for a 7-footer. First, getting Rudy to bite on an up fake, which gets him the space needed to step back for 3. It's silly how good this play was, as even though Naz Reid does have the size to contest a shot, that size doesn't matter if you can't stay with it, as Wemby loses him for a slam. Now in the 2-man game with CP3, which has been a staple for the Spurs offense this season, Wemby is granted a wide open lane because Rudy gets stuck in a 2-on-1. Wemby has also been great in off-ball situations so far in his career, here putting himself in the dunker position where Sohan can find him for 2. Here it is again, as CP3 sets a back screen for Victor, which gets him the space needed to make the catch down low, as he then spins away from the double of Gobert for 2. But this is why he's so dangerous, as here it's a very similar action, but this time he rises up for the jumper and knocks it down. It's so hard to stop a guy who can basically do anything off the catch, as it forces you to give something up, and on this possession they gave up the jumper. Here is another example of great off-ball movement by Wemby, as here he drifts from the top of the key down to the dunker, where Jones thinks he's playing good defense, only for Victor to quickly cut to the basket for a slam off the bounce pass from Paul. On this play, Zubac is helpless, as he gets caught out of position trying to make the closeout to Victor, which ultimately gives Wemby an open lane for a slam. Here's the CP3 Wemby connection once more, as they get Zubac a first-class ticket to Horror Island, where they then put him on a highlight. It's plays like these mixed with the next 3 reasons I'm about to touch on that makes his future so bright in this league. But now let's get to what ultimately stuns people who look at box scores, which is his defensive impact, which allows him to stuff the stat sheet with rejections. I don't know if there's ever been a shot blocker who's been this good this early into their career ever in NBA history, while delivering on offense also. He's been the league leader in blocks per game ever since he entered the league, which is a feat that shows you just how good of a defender Victor truly is. On the season, he's averaging 4 blocks a game again, but over the last 5 games, he's averaged 6.6 rejections per game, which included a 10-block game and an 8-block game. Let me repeat that again. He's damn near averaging 7 blocks per game over the last 5. This is truly absurd. I heard somebody mention recently that I don't think it's going to be long until he records the elusive quadruple double. And with the way he seems to rack up these crazy high block games while being able to score, rebound, and distribute at a high level, I can't say I disagree. But back to his defense though. With the way he's able to protect the rim, it almost seems helpless to try and finish over him. Oftentimes we see guys take the ball to him at the basket just to turn around and give up because they know there's simply no chance they're going to be able to finish the play. But what makes his defensive impact so threatening is how it's not just in the paint where he's shown flashes of being a stout defender. Wemby has even shown an ability to slide his feet and contest shots out on the perimeter against guards. He's even gotten so good at this that teams are now training to be able to get shots off over his outstretched arms because that's how hard it is to get a shot over him. He isn't just putting the NBA on notice because of his outstanding scoring ability or with his unreal defensive skill set. As the third reason as to why he's going to take the NBA over is because of his severely underrated playmaking. When you hear the name Victor Wembanyama, you instantly think of his ridiculous shot blocking ability, his height, and scoring talent. But we might have to add playmaking to that list also, because the flashes of elite playmaking that have started to come out more and more frequently is scary. Now, he is still averaging 3.6 turnovers per game, but that's a stat that's expected from a newer player in the league, unlike the rest of his stat line, which are usually reserved for stars in their prime. So his playmaking isn't on a consistent basis yet, but whenever he has these flashes of elite court vision and feel for the game, it's truly stunning. As if he can make consistent reads like these, he's going to turn into a Nikola Jokic, who also has elite athleticism and defensive skills. The Joker won 3 MVPs and an NBA championship without this absurd athletic ability or defensive impact. So just imagine what Victor could accomplish if he gets to even half the level of a playmaker that Jokic is. It might seem like a stretch that he's going to become as good of a decision maker as Jokic, but given his supreme coordination, height, and overall feel for the game, I don't think it's that outlandish. The highlights you've been seeing were all from last season, as straight out of the gates, he's shown an ability to be an outstanding distributor at times. He's great in pick and roll situations, either as the ball handler or roller, making split-second decisions as a passer, and as the screener, he's able to roll to the basket and finish because of his height, or pop out to the three-point line where he's more than capable of knocking down a triple. People forget that being a playmaker doesn't just mean being a great passer, as it really has to do with the player's ability to think the game. Although Wemby isn't consistently doing this right now, as he often goes through rough patches, it's these flashes that cannot be ignored. If these flashes become a consistent theme, once he gets more experience under his belt, the NBA is going to be in serious trouble. The fourth reason that he's going to overtake the NBA has to do with the Spurs' plan to develop Wemby's skill set even further. As much as some older NBA fans don't like to see Wemby taking as many deep threes as he is, it appears to be all part of a greater plan. For example, if he came into the NBA and was just trying to score at the basket, probably lose confidence in his jump shooting, which is currently his biggest offensive weapon, and there's a pretty good chance that he wouldn't have had as much success as he tries to battle against bigger and stronger centers. I believe when the time's right, he's going to take his game to a whole nother level, adding in a post threat, as when he came into the NBA, he spoke about wanting to develop a skyhook, but it's a delicate process. Because if he tries to rush his development, he might lose his jump shooting confidence as he puts too much muscle on too quickly, and he could lose his rhythm if he tries to change his game overnight. So for right now, being mainly a jump shooter isn't as bad as people make it out to be, especially when you consider he's made more threes than Steph Curry did at the same time in their careers. The outcome of this plan is to unlock a cheat code of a player. Once Wemby reaches his prime, the Spurs want to have developed every part of his game so he can be an elite scorer by shooting the ball or getting to the post, possessing a great ball handle for his size, having a great feel of the game so he can be a quality distributor with the ball in hand, while shutting down opposing offenses like we've never seen before, thanks to his defensive skill set. If this plan comes to life for the San Antonio Spurs, they might have the best player to ever play the game on their hands, especially when it comes to the multitude of things he can do on a basketball court. However, this isn't a foregone conclusion, as a lot of things could go wrong between here and there, between injuries, bad bad roster moves or Victor not actually reaching the level we all thought he could get to. Although that last one is looking pretty unlikely at the moment, with the way he started his career, the sky really is the limit. So even though I believe his future could hold one of the greatest careers we've ever seen, where does he currently place amongst the rest of the NBA? I've seen a lot of discourse online discussing whether or not he's top 10, and I've even seen people suggest that he's top 5, or that he's actually the best player in the NBA right now, but we're not ready to admit it. So this made me think, where do I have Victor Wembanyama ranked against the rest of the NBA right now? So let's go through it. I don't believe he's a better player than Giannis, Jokic, or Luka, as I believe that these guys are the clear best 3 in the league right now. I would also still have to put SGA and Tatum over Wemby right now, so that eliminates him from the top 5. But after that, it's hard to find someone who I could confidently have over Wemby. In the West, I think LeBron, Durant, Curry, and Anthony Davis are all close calls, which I could go either way on, which I wouldn't be mad at you if you went either way on. And by the way Wemby's been playing this season, I personally would probably have Wemby over all of these guys. In the East, I think he's better than Brunson, Mitchell, Lillard, and Jaylen Brown, but Joel Embiid is a guy who could put himself back into that conversation once he gets healthy. The same can also be said for Paolo Banchero, who was averaging 29 points a game over the first 5 games of the season, which was before his injury, but if he could return to that level once he's healthy, I think he's probably over him. But how many of these guys that I just mentioned would you actually put over Wemby? For me, it's not many, if any, which is wild to say, but 25 points a game with 10 rebounds, 4 assists, while being the league's best defender with 4 blocks per game is no joke. So as it sits right now, I'd be okay with saying that he's a top 10 player in the league right now, just outside of that top 5. It seems crazy to think about, but it's true. Even in his second season in the NBA, where he's still currently one of the worst versions of him that we're ever going to see, he's already cemented himself into the top 10, which is absolutely terrifying. But these are just my takes. Let me know yours in the comments section below regarding just how good of a player you think Victor Wembanyama will be once he reaches his prime years.